department. And I came from a very poor family, so my idea was, I knew art like Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci. My idea was I'd get a job as a commercial artist. I had a lot of talent, I thought, and I would make money. And, there was like a financial need there. And after a few years, I did try for a period of a few weeks, I tried art education. And I took one course, I can't remember what it was, and I just thought, I can't. And I realized by then that what I really wanted to do was paint. So I began to I entered the fine arts department and began to just paint. But I felt, and it was very difficult, and then I found that I couldn't paint, that I was terrible, that I didn't know how, and that I couldn't just make those Cezanne apples all glowing and beautiful.
But you wanted to.
But I really wanted to. I knew what I wanted to do. I had a real standard. I think it's your standards that draw you into what you end up doing, like some vision. Anyway, shouldn't I be looking at your work? Because
yeah, we're going to break now, and we're going to go over to Boston
Art Institute of Chicago, and an MFA degree from Mills College in Oakland, California. She is represented by Paula Cooper Gallery in New York, and is currently teaching at the School of Visual Arts in New York, although she's taught a number of other places. And she's going to be showing slides today that start from
art school.
Art school, okay. Art school is going up to current, very, very recent work. So I'll let Elizabeth Murray talk with you right now.
Hold on to it or clip it on.
I'll just hold on to it. Can everybody hear me? Okay. When you can't about these things. I'm going to show you work. The first series of work that I'll show is work that I did when I was in art school and in graduate school, and very early paintings. And seriously, if you have questions about any of them, what size they are, what they're made out of, please ask me. Because I don't have that much to say about things. I'll say some things that you can say, but it would really be helpful if you have questions, even if they seem dumb to you. Please ask them, because they're probably not, and I'd be interested in your questions. Okay. I went, as Bonnie said, to the Art Institute of Chicago, and I had a very traditional kind of training there. I'm showing you this slide because it was the first drawing that I did that I was really proud of. I was very proud of this drawing. I felt I really did something with the drawing personally, in a way, with the charcoal, or whatever I was using, charcoal, that I really liked. But this is how I learned to draw, and it's familiar to you, I'm sure, and it's how I learned to paint. I also had to take figure painting classes. When I was in art school, I went to school, as I was saying before, to Bonnie's class in a big museum, one of the best museums in the country. And I didn't know that I wanted to be a painter at first, an artist. I knew about literature, and I knew about literature and poetry, but I didn't know anything about painting. Walking through the museum, I saw these paintings, particularly a few. For instance, at the museum they have several incredible Cezanne paintings, and they have a painting by Seurat called the Grand Jatte, which is an incredible painting, pointillist painting. So I saw these things, and they started to get into me in a way that, anything really rich and good starts to get into if you look at it enough and if you're open. And I began to want to make a painting. But along with this, I also would go and look. The person who was the most powerful painter at that time was de Kooning and Pollock, Klein, the New York School. And I saw their paintings, and I really essentially learned to paint by looking at de Kooning. And this is one of the first paintings I did that I thought, where I got my mind and my heart and my arm all to sort of function somehow simultaneously. This little painting. I was in school in Chicago, and I went to school with all the people, to explain this painting a little bit. I went to school with all the people who later became the Harry Who group, Jim Knott and Gladys Nilsson, and I got very involved with images and with kind of horror images and sexual images. I was involved with looking at Beckmann and the German Expressionists too. I went out to California to go to graduate school, and it was a big revelation to me. Like, I was really just testing myself at the time, because I really hadn't realized what making a decision to be an artist meant. There were lots of things that came into the feeling that I wanted to do this. But when I was free of a school just for a few months and on my own, I felt this enormous pressure to try to work, and this kind of pressure that's quite unique, that I don't think a lot of people always experience it who aren't artists. I think it's one of the unique experiences of making art, that you're doing something in a mature way for the first time, that you've made a decision to do. It's not like, you got to get up in the morning and go to work because you've got to earn some money. It's after I would come home from work, I would feel the necessity to try to do this stuff. And it felt painful and very difficult to try to do it. And when I went out to California, went to graduate school, and I met this young man out there who people in California know. His name is Carlos Villa. And he amazed me, because instead of being like really the serious angst artist, which was my experience in Chicago, he actually drank beer when he painted. And he painted these enormous, wonderful paintings. And he sort of took me in tow and showed me where to buy paint. There was a place in San Francisco at that time called Byzantine Paint Store. And you could buy a gallon of cadmium red for $8. It was half oil. It was half linseed oil, but it was just, fantastic to have that, to see all that paint. So I had a very good time there. I really learned in a certain kind of way to loosen up. I got very involved with all this paint, and this is one of the paintings that I made there. We would literally stand across from the paintings and fling paint, the $8 gallons of cad red or whatever we would have. So I didn't know at the time, because I was just really beginning to find out about artists, that one of the big influences on all of these people had been Clifford Still, who had been there a number of years before, actually. So it was an interesting experience to be with these people, and exactly how I couldn't say, but it really fundamentally opened up my whole feeling about painting.
Could you give us an idea of the scale of that one?
Well, that's a detail.
Oh, that last one?
Yeah, so it was I was painting also. I began to paint very large. Most of the paintings that was maybe 6 by 7, the next paintings. This is a little etching I did. I got very involved from de Kooning I went to Gorky and got very involved in reading about him and looking at his work. And I was a printmaking assistant there. This etching kind of reflects that influence and interest in him. This is another painting of the period. And you can see the cad red being flung on. This is a very large painting. And basically what I was learning to do, which is always continues to be something that's important for me is how to build up a kind of story or feeling in the painting of passing through something. And this, looking at these paintings, I don't know what to say about them really. I can't really judge them because they're mine, and I did it when I was 22 years old. I thought it was fantastic at the time. But the thing I learned from these paintings is something that's always been true for me, is that it's the experience of making something that's important to me. It's not the product afterwards. If you don't have an exciting experience, an interesting, fruitful, although probably a struggling experience, one of the things I realized was all you have left is the painting, and it doesn't stand for very much. It's the experience. Another thing I got in touch with was just building up paint. What I would do with these paintings was build the paint up, I would put a lot of linseed oil on the paint. There was plenty enough already. And I learned to kind of scrape down the painting and sort of work it out from the surface of the canvas outward. Became real important to me. I also at that time found out this painting is hard to see. I saw Jasper John's work for the first time when I was out in California, and he was an enormous influence on me. Something about how he put the paint down was like a kind of reverse thing from what I was feeling about the looseness and openness of, say, abstract gestural painting, and he sort of tightened it in a way that was really interesting to me. Very conceptual and emotional somehow at the same time. That time I also discovered Rauschenberg and saw his work, and I became very interested in putting other things in the painting. And I became very involved in using more figurative images, using figures, kind of cartoony, rough figures in the paintings. This is my studio at the time in San Francisco. For instance, in a painting like that, the hand I made out of plaster and covered it with some kind of vinyl plastic. The light bulb is real. If you recognize it as a light bulb at all. The wood is real. The figure is all painted in. Now, this is a painting that this is sort of like the Baroque period of this is a man jumping over a hurdle. And there were two hurdles. There was one that was sort of glued and bolted onto the canvas, and then there was one that came further forward that there's not a picture of here. Anyway, the man was a combination of plywood, plaster, real shoes, a real hat. It weighed about half a ton, about 500 pounds. My idea of keeping all of this, my technology didn't get much further than Elmer's glue and a bolt or two. So, anyway, at this point, I left San Francisco, and I wanted to keep this painting. So we put it in a crate and went to Buffalo, New York, and it arrived in pieces, like in these little bits and pieces that really taught me about trying to preserve or save work at that point, because it didn't make it. This is a detail of a painting. Some pieces of wood, some pieces of plastic, a belt buckle. These are all details. I keep these there just to give people an idea of the kinds of combinations of things I was trying. I got involved in writing, and I got involved in using I got involved in this fantasy writing that where I was using, this is turned around actually, I was using the characters of Little Orphan Annie and Dick Tracy. This is one of the drawings for the writing paintings. At this time, the art I was primarily looking at was pop art. I was very interested in it. I was interested in Oldenburg, and I was interested not so much in Warhol. He was a little too spacey for me, but I liked some of his images. I've always thought he's a very brilliant artist. But I was interested mostly in Dine, in Oldenburg. In Dine and Oldenburg, really. I was not so, and I was interested in Rosenquist. This is a self-portrait, very small, like I think it couldn't have been more than 2 feet by 2.5 feet maybe. And what I did was take my shirt and fold it onto the canvas and paint on it. Now, this is a bit of a jump, but when I was in Buffalo for a couple of years, I spent a lot of time doing sculpture, and the only slides I have of those things are oversized, really. I have photograph and slides, and I just have transparencies of them. When I began to do the sculpture, I began to also do. The sculpture was very influenced by Oldenburg. I was cutting up canvas and sewing it together and stuffing it. I also was using painting on it. But my work got into a place that was extremely confusing to me. I didn't like it, but I didn't know what else to do. And I was able to be happy with it only for limited periods of time. I didn't even really focus on what the problem was. I just went on with it. I moved to New York at that time, and I began to work with much more specific, tighter kinds of images. This is the Empire State Building on fire. And out of the fire is the smoke which forms the words from a Rolling Stones song that I liked at the time. What it all means, I can't tell you.
Is the entire surface painted?
Yes. There's a little spray paint in there. I was using acrylic paint, oil paint, and some enamel spray paint. But it has and also the frame is painted in. That's total illusion. It's like all painting, if that's what you were wondering about. Yeah. No, I guess about 5.5 by 7. So this was this would be 1967 that I made this painting. That's one. I did about 5 or 6 of those paintings. They took an enormous amount of time, and in a way, I was really I felt like I was killing time, but I was doing other things at the time. I was having a baby. I was very that takes a lot of time, and it changed my energy enormously. I didn't want to stop working, but I really was unhappy with what I was doing. The painting that you saw before of that series, I did about 6 or 7 paintings of the Empire State Building. All the kind of paintings that are like masterpieces in terms of how you think of doing them. Very tight, like that one. Kind of fantasy, psychological orientation. But I really wasn't happy with them. And the last painting I did, I'm showing you this. This is most of these things are long destroyed. I cut up into tiny pieces and I sewed it together. And I didn't like it, but I needed to do it, and I needed to do something that I could look at. So this is one of the things that I was doing at that time. So my solution was to just go back to painting again, and painting with oil paint again, which was what I understood and have always liked. It's like a language that's very rich for me. I think, and this is one of the first paintings I did, I think that these first paintings really reflect the tightness from the other paintings. This painting is maybe 3.5 by 3.5. Most of the things were fairly small. I was painting, it's supposed to be a little armchair. Looks like a bunch of little asses sort of floating around in the air to me now. I'm sorry about this slide. It's terrible. This is actually the first painting that I did when I began to just work flat on canvas with oil paint, which is how I thought of it. I just felt like somehow I just gotten to something that was really challenging to me that I could do. I sort of was thinking of myself as kind of a bear of small brain at the moment. And I felt that with the other work I'd just gotten so out in left field that I really had no way of being personal with it. And I'm pointing this out because there are usually clear images for me in what I paint. The image around the border is the sun and the reflection of the sun, and the image inside is a little house with the sun. And this is another painting from that time.
What size is that?
It's about 2.5 by 3, a little over 3 feet.
Would you make some preliminary sketches before you would begin?
No, I very seldom do that. I usually just go right to the painting and start to work. Somewhat larger painting.
How recent was this then?
This would be about 1970. Whoops. This is a painting of a dog eating. I've always been interested, and I was especially interested in that time in fragmenting or in narration and in time, and how to take a flat space and show time or change in some way visually. In that way, I think one of the biggest influences of my life, because it's actually the visual art I've been the most acquainted with, has been the cartoon. But this is using the idea of the boxes and showing movement in each box. I did a series then involved with dividing those kinds of divisions. Called the Madame Cézanne series. I used in a very open way. I used a painting I've always loved of Madame Cézanne's wife in a red armchair. And this is Madame Cézanne turning out the light. And it reads from the top left-hand corner across to the other left-hand corner, sort of down like that. Just a little interior. It's a drawing.
What medium are you using?
It's colored pencil and pen and ink. Now, there's a little bit of a gap here. I think there's some slides that sort of are in between what you just saw and this. I wanted to get in, it's hard to describe exactly what I wanted. I wanted to get the more obvious representation or figuration in some way out of my work. I'm not sure why, but I did. And this is a painting that's involved with that. Trying to get to simpler, more basic, more primary kind of shapes and marks. And I was also interested in really focusing on something that's always been important to me, which is just the physicality of the paint, just the paint. So this painting is sort of brought this up for me. It's another drawing. From that to this, what I felt I wanted to do was go directly to get color out. What I felt I was doing was drawing in the paint anyway, so I wanted to bring it down to real basic, simple things. I was never really interested I never have been interested in formal painting, and I never thought of any of this group of paintings that you're going to see on and off, because I think there's some other slides in here, in formal kind of paintings. This would be, I guess, about 1972, 1973. But I wanted to connect myself to a kind of painting that I'd always admired and never really been able to feel emotional about, which would be the work of, say, someone like Kelly or Newman, more minimal kind of approach. Another thing that felt very important to me, just psychologically, was that I was involved in trying to get my ego out of my work, and I was attaching my ego to the kinds of images that I continually came up with to make my work. I wanted to really see if I could do without them. And it seems very simplistic, but what I did was just decide to do real field kind of paintings, line on a field. This is one of those paintings. This next group of painting is all about really exploring that. They're very physical. That one you saw before is about 6 by 6. This is maybe 14 by 16 inches. This group of paintings that's coming up now. This slide is real yellow. It's a white, greenish white with a green line. And I was interested in the time, the motion, the very slow motion, but mostly I got involved in them through painting, through putting the paint in it. Is this skipping? There's something the matter here.
Are there slides?
Yeah, there should be slides.
Okay, let's just check here for a second. I wasn't sure if you had.
No, there's a
out.
whole,
Okay.
I think.
Oh, you got spaces.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. I wasn't sure.
just as well.
What did you think about getting your ego out of the way? What is the idea?
That's hard to really. I'm saying that I was attaching my ego, or I felt that the images that I was using were things that I knew about, that had to do with what I was conscious about, things I knew how to do. And I wanted very much to try something that was unknown to me, that I really didn't know about what I could do next, how to pursue it, all those kinds of things. So it felt like it didn't feel unsafe to me in the sense that people hadn't worked like that before. I've never felt for my own self that I'm exploring some unknown territory in my work or something like that. I've never really had those feelings at all. What I said to myself was, I want to get my ego out of this work. I want it to be somehow more universal, more simple, more pure, more involved with paint. But I wasn't thinking of formal. I was not thinking of formal at all.
In these paintings, were there a lot of configurations that happened, or this image, were they pretty quick?
The configuration happened very slowly, but I knew I was going to use black and white, and that the white line would be indented into this black. And I knew, in a sense, I had a clear feeling about how I wanted it to be. But the configuration came out very slowly. Like I painted all these very, very slowly, which was the exciting part for me. And when I look at them, to tell you the truth, I do see them very slowly. It doesn't feel like a fast image to me. I don't know. Now this is like 8 by 10 inches. They're all pretty small paintings. I don't know if I can get this.
What materials were you using for these paintings?
Just canvas and oil paint.
Were you using brushes?
Oh yeah, brushes, palette knife, fingers.
Anything that... Would you...
Just the traditional material.
Were you working on this series simultaneously, or with each one?
I did all of these very much together. I think I did them in the space of about 6 months, and I think I did them in 1974.
How important was the overall sort of surface quality on these things?
Well, I felt like...
Was that a consideration, or did it just sort of happen? You know, in the process of like working on an image?
I don't think you can really consider the surface. I think the surface happens. I think that the surface comes out of what you're making. And in these, what was real important to me was that the surface, that how the paint was put down or is put down, made the configuration. So in a sense, I guess that would somehow involve it with process, but I wasn't thinking it would involve it more in process. But I wasn't specifically thinking about process. I was very involved in the physicality of the paint and in keeping that very simple and kind of really turgid in a way. This is sort of the most refined, really, of that group of paintings. It's a thick cobalt blue.
Would you work out your ideas totally on the canvas?
Well, with these, that was the whole thing.
Yeah, in other words, totally on the surface.
Yeah. I was doing some drawings at this time, but actually the drawings were about something much later. I wasn't drawing about these at all.
Are the lines scraped out?
About 2.5 by 3.5. Yeah, the lines are scraped out. What I would do would be to scrape out the line and put the line back in and then scrape it out again. So this painting was interesting to me because it seemed very refined, but it felt like it moved very slowly again, that it moved very slowly. Now, it seems kind of empty to me. At the time, I was really very involved in it. It was really about the content of the blue making and the paint being blue, like very physical kind of intensity that I was involved in. And this is really about the same issue.
This is quite a different dimension.
Yeah.
Did that come because you saw that shape sort of in your mind?
Well, yeah, like all the shapes. I've always been interested in very specific kinds of shapes. When I make a painting, I don't like to just go pick out stretchers or something. Like I have something, I like 1/2 inches and 3/4 inches. For some reason, maybe that's like being touchy or something, or I don't know, decadent maybe. But I do like things that are slightly off. And exactly why I got interested in the narrow shape, I don't know, but I did, and it really changed a lot of things for me. The minute I began to do the narrow shape, I hadn't thought about this for a long time, but it was very interesting to me personally to try the narrow shape because it became a shape, and it changed my thinking about the painting quite a lot. But this is the first one that I did, and I think it's about 16 by 6 feet, 16 inches by 6.5 feet. But I have no idea what the motivation was exactly to try those. I think I just was bored with the more rectangular things. I got tired of, this is the same size as the other, using just line on a ground of paint. And I wanted to do a shape on a ground. This is one of the first paintings like that I did. And here I just wanted to I made a plank of blue, and then I took little notches out of it and stuck them on the top and at the sides. In a sense, I was really thinking a lot about sculpture, and I always have, actually. But with this painting particularly, I was really thinking about sculpture. Like,
When was this?
1975. And this is actually one of the first paintings that I showed in New York. The very first painting I showed in New York was the Dakota's Red painting, the red paint that had all the shiny stuff on it, which is a whole other aspect of working. But I began to feel at this point that I was really ready to show my work, and it was the first time that I felt that very strongly, that I could show it and that it was really meaningful, that it could be seen. I'd tried to, I'd had a few people from galleries over, and it hadn't felt good, it hadn't felt right. But it's very complex that when you're beginning to feel that you're ready to do that. And at this point it became very clear to me, I got some kind of a confidence that it was a question of my deciding who I wanted to show my work. And the people whose galleries I basically had a poor opinion of, or didn't like the art that they showed, didn't like the dealer that much, I just left them out. I sort of took matters into my own hands in a clearer way for myself. It made me feel very good, because I think many artists get very confused about that, and it's easy to. And one forgets, especially in New York, that you're the artist, that this is your work, and you don't even have to show it. You don't have to show it. You shouldn't show it until you really feel ready to show it. And that when you want to show it, you can decide where you want to show it. If they're not interested, it's their problem. But it gave me a very good feeling at that point. I think it was because I was really feeling good about my painting. I wanted to use color, and this painting is about that. It's a small painting, about 10 by 10 inches. And I chose something very obvious. I did a series of paintings about balls with a square in them. I was very excited about this painting when I did it. It's not going to do it. Could someone see if they could focus it a little bit better there? Because it's nice if this painting is in focus. Just a touch. I've been working small for a long time, and this was the largest I'd worked in several years. It's about 7 by 5 inches or so. And the whole painting for me was about a very simple division and about holding color, like a color container. There's not too much to say about it. I was really excited about it when I made it. And this was like a twin painting to it that I did at exactly the same time. I was working on both of these paintings simultaneously. It was the first time that I'd used those marks in that way. And it was the first time that I used color, which in such a clear way for myself. I'd never thought about color before. I really had never thought about it. It was like a means to an end. And in a sense, I must say, I do think color is a means to an end. I don't think color for me can ever really be a whole painting. But it was enormously exciting for me to find out about how much pleasure I could get using color in this way. And it was a completely new thing. I think I've been working up to it for a long time, but this was the most clear place where I really felt I was using it.
On that last, can you go back that last page?
I'll see if I can. Oops. Okay.
Are there some small areas? I see in the upper left-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner I see forms, but is there an area at the center of that canvas, or is that the slide in the middle of the dark area? About in the middle of the canvas? I see things on the...
Well, there's a black little notch there.
In about the center?
It's a little off-center.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a black mark. It's like a little curve.
Okay, because I see something in the lower orange area, a little form, and a small and upper right. I wasn't sure if that center one was...
Yeah.
It's hard to see with the slides.
Yeah. There's there's a diamond in the lower right-hand corner, and then there's a diamond in the upper left. And then there's a little square in the upper right. And a little kind of nose. That little black curve there in the sort of off-center there.
The diamonds in the upper left and lower right are the same color?
No, one's red and the other I can't remember. It's a gray blue or... Sorry. Oh, it's black actually. And then the little square down in the bottom there is pink, and the upper one is a color called Mars Violet, deep, with white in it. It makes a purple kind of a shade. At this point, I went out to California and to teach at a school out there, CalArts. And I wanted to get out of New York. I wanted to work by myself, and I wanted to sort of separate myself from the art world there, just be alone for a while. I don't know if CalArts was really the best place to do it, because it's the proximity to Los Angeles, but it's close. But I was able to do some things I'd been thinking about for a while. I wanted to make some shapes, and I wanted to do it privately, just shapes that had been on my mind. One of the things that I found, I don't know if it's ever really affected me, but somehow in New York there's a great emphasis on original or on new, and I wasn't so involved with that. I mean, lots of people have done shape paintings. I had my own reasons for wanting to do them, primarily because I really was very bored with working on a rectangle or a square or whatever, so I wanted to try to see what would happen to edges and to shapes inside of shapes. This is one of the first paintings that I did involved with that. And this is the very first one. So I sort of found myself at this point going towards a more flatter, the physicality of the paint was more and more pushed for me. I was getting more and more involved with edges and how the orange would meet the red, how the red would meet the gray. At this point, like very hard kind of things. I don't mean hard intellectually or anything. It was like, to me, the paint was hardening in some sort of a way. This is a rectangle that I just turned on a point. It's not a large painting. It's probably about 4.5 by 4 by 9 or something.
You seem to be getting into a very simplified kind of imagery.
Yeah, at this point, that was really what was happening.
Bottom for something, or?
Well, by the time I got to this painting, which worked really well for me, I wasn't understanding exactly what I was using the shapes for, but I was feeling like I was definitely coming to the end of the line in terms of what the line was doing with the shape and the color. It felt like I could go on for a long period of time doing this kind of painting, but I was, I guess scraping bottom would probably be a good expression. So what I began to do was really bring into the painting, I wanted again to have fuller kinds of shapes, to bring more specific kind of shapes into the painting. And this is one painting that I began to do that with. And what I was thinking here specifically of was a face going across a moon. I let the shapes, this is, I guess, 1977, get sort of goofier and goofier. I don't think this is one of the best of this series, but I kind of like it. The only thing I was clear about in this group of paintings, and I'm going to show you now, is that I wanted what was inside the canvas, inside the stretchers, to really conflict with what was outside, with the edges. And that kind of tension and conflict was very clear to me that I wanted that. This is from about 2 years before that.
What size is this one?
I guess it's about 5 by. It's slightly off. It's not a large. Every side of this canvas is a different size. It's like, say, 5 by 1 by 5 by 2 by 5 by 3 by 5 by 4. So it's a very kind of unsettled sort of shape. Like,
Were you building these yourself?
no, I can't build them myself anymore. I didn't build this myself either.
What is the significance to the border? It seems to be the same on all of these in this series, the border.
What do you mean? Oh, that's a shadow. Yeah. So that's just the way they photograph or slide. This actually has a very narrow white edge to it all the way around. A real tiny white edge that you can barely see in this. Now this is very deceptive because it's a very large painting.
What time period is
This is 1977 as well. Actually, yeah, this is 1977. Well, after doing the shapes, I wanted a lot to do just a straight rectangle again, and what interested me about this, obviously, is like twisting it so that it does look like it's still a shape somehow. These are all the same shape. What I did was have 5 of them made and put the canvas on them and just turn them around to get different configurations. And I was thinking really of a turning star. I was thinking of a kind of star shape. This again is like very large painting that I mentioned that I call this painting Traveler's Dream. And it's very, the pink is very pink and the green is very green. And the slide actually is not that far off, it's just a bit dark. Could you focus it a little bit better? Yeah.
Actually, it's a dark slide with pink and green stand out.
Yeah. Another large painting called Children's Meeting. So, I think this is 1978.
What kind of surface is on this one? Seems to vary a lot from one.
Well, they all do. Sometimes you can really see it on the slides and sometimes you can't. Like, I'm not interested at all really in a smooth surface. In fact, I really like to have that variation. Like, that paint is called Cobalt Violet. I think I was using Rembrandt. It's Cobalt Violet Deep. And I put a lot of layers on it, and it all dried kind of differently. So that's really what it is. And it's scraped on as well, scraped and brushed. So. Oh, now this slide is very dark. I wanted to do the, if you look at it a little bit, you can see the image. I'm very fond of this painting. It's about 10.5 feet high. I wanted to make the star shapes larger. And this is, I just did 2 of them. This is one of them.
Is there a line going through that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right-hand corner,
Yeah,
green.
it's a gray, it's like a little gray cane. It's actually a Davies gray.
through the green and through the blue.
Mm-hmm, right. I'm sorry about this light, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you're in New York, if you want to see this painting, it will be at the Whitney in a couple months. So, and I like the painting a lot, so it's hard to, it was, I guess, hard to take a slide of. I did some X shapes just last year. Now this is really recent. I just really finished this painting a month or so ago. I'm interested in a lot of different things like right now, but one of the things that I wanted to do was take the shapes and use them together. I call this painting breaking. And the image is of a beer glass breaking. I guess altogether it's about 8 feet high and probably about 8 feet wide with a separation. So it feels very tight. It doesn't feel that big actually. And this is a very large painting that I just finished also. And it's taken in someone's house.
Physically, how do you work on a canvas that size?
With a couple ladders. This painting, it's not easily seen. It's in 2 panels. Again, similar to the other one, except it's like 2 straight panels.
How does that work in this case?
Well, the division, if you look closely, you can see it right in between the black line and the white line. The 2 panels come together. And I was interested...
They're hinged together.
Well, they're bolted together. But you can really see there's no attempt to disguise the... I call the painting join. I really am interested in working in pieces of things, putting pieces of things together, separate pieces to make a whole. And this is... I wanted to do a painting in 2 panels. I did this painting actually before I did the one you saw before it. So that's my work up to this point.
Are the straight lines taped, the yellow and the darker one? Are those edges taped at all? Or are those totally?
I used tape where the green meets the red. That's not yellow. I used tape a lot to get the start of the line. In some of these paintings, not in all of them. And then I work over the tape. But that's not a yellow. Now I see how deceptive these slides are. That's where the red and the green meet. I use tape to form that line in both of those shapes. The white line and the black line I just drew on straight, and the edges of the shape.
But you do use tape selectively.
If I want to make sure the line is going to go straight, I use tape, to make it start. I don't like to use it to finish up because I don't like that look. It goes too fast. I like to have a slow edge. But I'll do it to kind of map out I make templates of shapes too, like cut shapes out of paper and stuff.
To get edges.
To get a shape sometimes. I'll take a piece of paper, a big piece of paper, and cut a shape out and stick it on the canvas. One of the best things about oil paint is it's sticky. It's like glue.
To see how you like that form in that
to
shape.
see how I like it.
And then if you like it, you translate it then to the paint?
Well, I put it on in paint. I mean, I do everything directly on the canvas. If I don't like it, I scrape it off. Okay, that's it. If there are questions, please feel free.
Are there any questions back, Elizabeth? I have a question. How does visibility affect you and your work? Now that your work is more visible than ever before?
Well, I think the things that have affected my work more than visibility are that I've started to sell my work. And because I have more money, I can work bigger, I can have a bigger place to live and do my work. And I think that's made bigger difference in visibility. I think I block those things out. I don't take it into account, really. And I stay fairly private, so I don't really. That seems like another part of it that doesn't have that much to do with me.
One of your images was of the beer glass, breaking, shattering. Do you have other ideas that come to you like that where you'll work out? It's what we see, it looks extremely reduced in, design, but do you have other ideas like that?
Yeah, not a lot, but when they do, they always seem very fortuitous to me. Like, certain images, I feel like I can really do something particular with them, are especially metaphorical.
Yeah. The beer glass one really, once you mentioned that, it really started to do a whole lot more.
Yeah.
For me, yeah. Are there any other questions for Elizabeth?
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Really.